Hello, my beautiful friends, our Dr. Humans, and welcome back to the poddy and our final episode, our final pillar of the unshakable mindset. Now, while I said that my favorite pillar was the last one, pillar 3, on our relationship with emotions, and in particular, our relationship with suffering. This pillar is the one that my clients, my doctors tend to love the most and get the most benefit from the fastest. And that's because this is the area that we're most confused in, particularly because a lot of us are service-minded and people pleasers. We're highly caring, compassionate, and particularly empathetic for other people. And that can create a lot of confusion and a lot of accidental disempowerment in our lives. So when my clients get their hands on these mindsets, they can make dramatic changes really fast. It gives you so much clarity, choice, and control back in your life. I am famous with my clients and potentially infamous with other people because of my controversial views on boundaries. I don't personally really like them. And with the kind of coaching and mindsets I offer, my clients will rarely end up choosing boundaries as the thing that they'd like to do or change in their dilemmas, in their challenges in their life. And this pillar of the unshakable mindset is going to show you why. And it's going to show you something that, in my opinion, is way better than boundaries. Because when you have boundaries, it means that you need to exclude yourself. I would rather my clients, my dear darling members, develop the skill of being unaffected, of being the person in control of their experience, not giving that power away to other people around them. Because when they do that, they can stand in whatever room they want to stand in, literally or metaphorically. There are, of course, times and places for boundaries, and even somebody with an unshakable mindset might fall out of it sometimes and want to implement a boundary in lieu of getting back into their unshakable mindset. However, I want to offer you these mindsets and the skill sets that come with living them. Because in my experience, nobody's ever given you the option to think this way about yourself relative to other people in the world. So, as always, take what works for you, leave the rest, but promise me you'll keep an open mind, even for those mindsets that rub you the wrong way. Remember, these are all for you. Ask yourself how this could be for you. Because you, my friend, deserve the best opportunities in this life. I'll say no more, and let's get into this final pillar of the unshakable mindset. Welcome. All right, my beautiful friends, here it is. The unshakable mindset pillar, which is on your relationship with other people. This is one of the most powerful, impactful belief system upgrades, changes in our model of the world that my clients experience and love getting, because it's where so many of us are the most confused about our power and our responsibility in our life. And this isn't at all our fault. This is because of the way that we've all commonly been conditioned in our society. In general, we all take way too much responsibility and take things way too personally in terms of what other people do and how other people feel and what that means about us and what we should do in response or what we've done wrong to cause that. And when we think from this mindset, we also lose so much power and autonomy in ourselves. We hold our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors at ransom. I'll talk more about that in this section, but essentially, we don't give ourselves permission to do the things we want to do because we're sitting around waiting for somebody to do something to allow us or somebody to anoint us. We don't allow ourselves to feel the way we want to feel because we think that they need to do X, Y, Z so that we can feel that way. And we don't allow ourselves to think what we want to think, believe what we want to believe about the world because we think that what other people think, particularly about us, is probably what's most true about us rather than being able to trust and hear our own thoughts. Now, in addition to those problems, when you don't have this unshakable mindset around your relationship with other people, is the pain and suffering and energy that you pour into trying to control other people, trying to control something that you can't control, which of course makes you feel totally out of control. The reciprocal of that is it also means we're not using all of our resources to pour into what we can control, which is so much more than we think. So chiefly in here, we're going to clean up these ideas, or I'm going to offer you new belief systems, new ways of thinking about other people that don't perpetuate this sense of over responsibility for other people and how they show up and how they feel in their experience. And also don't have you trying to control or manipulate them essentially because of that sense of over responsibility. These mindsets are going to help you stop giving away your power. They're going to help you take your power back and help you use these precious resources to pour into things that actually make a difference to you in your life, and help you have and create and nurture, perpetuate the type of relationships that you actually want to keep, the type of relationships that you love your reasons for, and that are fulfilling. We're going to separate ourselves from others at first, only to allow for greater connection. Without further ado, here are my unshakable mindset offers. All right, my beautiful friends, the first belief in this pillar on your relationship with other people is I don't take things personally. And with that, recognizing that I can't read minds. I can't read other people's minds. Although by default, I'll walk around the world in general because of my human brain believing that I can. But instead, I want to very explicitly offer you this model of the world. This belief that you can't read minds and that you don't take things personally, because it's so common for us to fall for the trap of taking things personally and believing that we can read people's minds, believing that we can look at people, watch their behavior, watch their decisions, watch how they show up, and know that that's because of us, because of how we've behaved, or because of something we've done, in particular something we've done wrong, or something that we've done to upset or disappoint them or make them angry or make them not like us, not accept us, reject us, criticize us, etc. And this is not your fault. You're really not to blame for this way of thinking. I think we've all grown up hearing, don't do that, it'll hurt their feelings. Do this, it'll make them feel better. Not only A, making how others feel our responsibility, something that we need to take responsibility for and fix or manipulate, but also B, believing that we have the power to do that anyway. That what we do does directly affect how they feel, and by extension, what they think and how they behave. It's just not how the world works. It's not how people work. So let's clear this up so that you can be more empowered in the world and not take over responsibility, not be in over responsibility, and therefore trying to control things that are outside of your control, which ironically you'll find will make you feel the most out of control you could feel. Trying to control something that you don't have control over. And then of course we all know the effects and the suffering that comes with the guilt and shame and so on, of thinking that we haven't done the job we're meant to do by making them feel better or making them feel whatever way we're apparently supposed to be able to. So firstly, let's clear this up. No, you can't read people. I like to think of myself as an empathetic person too. I like to think that I pay attention and I notice things and I care enough about people and their experience that I will pick up on a lot of signs that show me what this person might be experiencing. And I had to humbly accept that it's not actually true that I can completely understand the inner workings of people based on these bits and pieces that I pick up when I watch them or communicate them or even feel some kind of energy between us. There is still this filter here of me receiving whatever sensory information I can, visual, auditory, physical sensations. My mind receives the electrical signals for that. And then what my mind does is, of course, interpret that collection of information that's come from those electrical signals, and then my brain will build a context around that. It will add a meaning to it. It will interpret that information. But what's not happening, based on as much as we understand about the brain today, is that we're receiving some direct information about what's actually happening inside for that person. Our brain is, as with every other part of the world, as with every other conscious experience we have, making inferences, right? So No, we can't read people. That's only our arrogance speaking, and us speaking from our model of the world, our interpretations of the other person. And maybe it'll help you realize you can't read other people's minds, guys. You can barely read your own mind. I work very hard to be able to recognize what's happening inside of my own mind and my own experience. And with building self-awareness, you will also understand how much of a skill just being able to get a glimpse of clarity of yourself is. And coaching is a very good way to get that self-awareness. They've even looked at studies between how much we think we can read the minds of strangers versus our loved ones. And it turns out that in general, we only think that we can read our most intimate partners and the people that we spent the most time with. It's our confidence that increases with time spent with them, but not necessarily our accuracy or understanding of the content of our mind. We just think that we know what they're thinking and their inner workings, rather than actually knowing more or being able to read them more. And just consider how that makes sense also, because, you know, as much as we might spend more time with people, we might learn the patterns about what were the inner workings behind the behaviors that we can see and the reactions that we can see from them. But people change over time. I'm certainly not the same person that I was, and I don't think in the same way as when I first met my partner. So if he kept working on the model of me as he understood me so many years ago, then he would be way off the mark. If he made the same behaviors and reactions that I had mean the same thing in terms of what drove them, in terms of my thoughts and emotions, because they're different. What drives maybe the same behaviors I have now are different thoughts and emotions because I'm growing and changing. Most people are. So that's really the first premise of this belief, that you can't read people's minds, even if you're confident that you can. Humbly question that. And then the second part of this belief or model of the world is recognizing that not only will we believe that we can read other people and read their minds, but when we do this mind reading, we will often focus that mind reading on ourselves. We will be interpreting the meaning behind their actions relative and making it relevant to ourselves, because what do our minds care most about? Ourselves. This doesn't make you a selfish person, but it's just the primary function of our minds. They're most concerned, chiefly concerned, with our safety and keeping us alive. Thank you, brain, for being so diligent to keep me alive. But what I want you to recognize is that that means that our brain is always making everything in the world about us. It wants to know how what's happening is relevant to us and our survival, our safety, our opportunities and threats in particular. What that looks like in everyday life is that we tend to take things personally. We tend to watch other people doing whatever they do in the world, and then we make it about us. This is not a way of thinking that you can just totally wipe out from how your brain works. You cannot decondition this completely. Rather, what we want to do here is undo making what they do about you. Expect and accept that our mind will do that. And then remember this belief, this model of the world, to think from a place of, I can't read minds and I don't need to take this personally. Let me give you some common day examples of mind reading and then making it personal. Someone shows up to a meeting, professional or personal, late. We think, they don't value my time. They don't think I'm valuable, or they don't think my time is valuable. A friend doesn't text you back, or doesn't text you back for days, or even just for 24 hours. Our minds make it mean they just don't like me that much, or they just don't care about me. Someone in the crowd is looking bored or disinterested in your presentation. Our minds make it mean, I've made a boring presentation. I'm not being engaging enough. One of your patients leaves you for another doctor. Our minds make it mean, I mustn't be a good doctor, or they think I'm incompetent. Someone asks for your help at work, and you think, clearly they don't value my time. Or someone doesn't ask for your help, and you think, they clearly don't value my expertise or think I have any expertise. This style of thinking, this interpretation of people's behavior is really common. Just scan your thoughts for events over the last week and recognize where you made it personal and you accepted that first guess, that mind reading that your mind did when it gave you an explanation. But I want you to flip this and recognize, just as your mind is chiefly concerned with you, their minds are chiefly concerned with them. It's actually more likely, based on how our minds work, that their actions had less to do with whatever they were thinking about you and more to do with them and what they wanted or what they were worried about or struggling with. Someone late for a meeting might have been under pressure of another deadline or trying to get something else done. They might have been distracted with something else and just not recognize the time. They might just have poor time management skills in general. You don't necessarily come into that equation at all. Someone not texting you back probably has more to do with how much they enjoy or resist texting. Hello, me, I really don't enjoy texting. There are people that I dearly love that I don't text back for a long time. It doesn't correlate with how much I love them. This is about me and how much I don't like texting. Nothing to do with them. Someone not asking you for help, even in your area of expertise, even when you've made yourself available, I'm sure my doctors understand, can be more about us not wanting to or being willing to ask for help, or even considering that it's an option to ask for help. Again, nothing to do with you, everything to do with the person taking the actions or not taking the actions. Yet, we mistakenly think we can read minds and make it personal when we do it. Now, they might have reasons or thoughts behind those behaviors for which you are actually the subject matter. They might be showing up late to the meeting because they're resisting it, because they're having the thought, oh my gosh, she's so annoying. I do not want to spend this much time with her. I want to shorten that time as much as possible, so I'm going to subtly do it by being late. Someone might ask you for help from a place of disrespect. They might be thinking, well, she's not doing anything important with her time. She's got plenty of time to give. And maybe they were some of the principal thoughts driving their behavior of asking you for help. Someone can have thoughts about how they dislike you, disapprove of you. They can reject you. They can be disappointed in you. They can have all these negative thoughts about you, your character, you are as a person, or your decisions, judgments of you. And still, I want you to not take this personally. Here's why it's not personal. Slow down and listen to me here. It's not personal in that even if they were having these thoughts, these negative thoughts about you, disliking you, disapproving of you, rejecting you, being disappointed in you, for example, you know it's not about you, because there are other people who don't have those same thoughts about you. You are not the cause of their thoughts. They are the cause of their thoughts. And you'll see additionally that sometimes no matter what you do, no matter what you change, their thoughts will not change. So you can change, but their thoughts about you won't. And you can stay the same. You can take the exact same behavior. Two people can witness and experience that behavior side by side, seat by seat, separated by less than a meter. And they can and will have different thoughts about you. One of them can reject you and one of them can celebrate you. Why? Because their thoughts aren't caused by you. You aren't the cause of their thoughts. Their thoughts are theirs, just like your thoughts are yours. All right? So this is why it makes no sense to take things personally. And much worse than that, it can hurt us and waste our resources, put us into that over-responsibility situation where we're trying to control something we can't. We can try and try and try to change ourselves, our behaviors, the way we show up, in an attempt to control what they think and how they feel about us. But when you truly understand their thoughts are not about you, they're not caused by you, then you can stop wasting your time trying to control what they think. This is called impression management in psychology, and it is a total waste of our time and energy, and it derails us from becoming people that we like ourselves and being able to have thoughts of liking ourselves. When we can stop making things personal, when we can stop taking things personally, we will stop trying to control other people's thoughts about us. And you will gain so much brain space back, so much clarity, choice, and control, and so much energy that you've previously been wasting fruitlessly. Now, quick little note here, because people will say things like, but if everybody thinks it, if everybody has the same reaction to me, then is it true? Then am I really the cause? And still, no, because you know the principle already, right? You know that there will be somebody out there who could react differently because of our human minds, because of human nature. Be careful of falling into the trap that if the majority think it, then it must be right. The majority have believed all kinds of things. Even again, the majority of scientists have agreed upon things in the past. And then even though the majority agreed, it's been disproven, right? And it's actually a very dangerous thought error that we can have, where we just assume that if the majority believe it, then it's right. We stop thinking for ourselves. We stop questioning things. We just move with that momentum. What they think has everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. What they think is their creation, their responsibility. It has everything to do with them, and it will be based on their personal experiences over life, their social conditioning, their cultural influences, and their value sets. And also, let's not forget just the way that our human minds work, which is flawed. It's not rational, economical. It's highly biased. Now, on this note, what's also true is people who have positive thoughts, impressions, ideas about you, people who feel warmly to you, who like you or love you in the same way, has more to do with them than you. It's not your doing. It's not your brilliance or lovability that has made them like you and love you and approve you and celebrate you. It has more to do with their thoughts, the way that they choose to see you, the way that they choose to think about you. You don't get the credit for somebody liking you and thinking highly of you. They created those beautiful thoughts about you, and you can be grateful for them, but you can't take responsibility for them. And this is a great lesson for those of us, most of us, who are highly driven by and get a big kick out of external validation, when other people think highly of us or even just like us and accept us. If you want to be less affected by people not liking you, then it might actually be useful to be less attached to people liking you. You know, using the reasoning of, oh, I am likable because XYZ people like me. What you're doing here is you're still outsourcing the responsibility to other people. You're still putting that power in other people's hands. When instead, going back to pillar 1, the best way that you can feel likable is to decide to like yourself and not be at the whim of other people's opinions that can up and change and also be misinterpretations of you. They will always actually technically be misinterpretations of you and filled with assumptions that may or may not be true about you, that determine whether somebody likes you or doesn't like you. So, how somebody behaves and what they think about you is not something to take personally. And be very diligent to notice how we are constantly believing we can read people's minds. Remember, I want you to undo making what they do about you, whether you're making it mean something good about you or bad about you. In reality, their thoughts are theirs, their creation, their responsibility, and instead, I want you to be focusing on your thoughts, taking responsibility for your thoughts and making sure you're creating thoughts that support you in the life that you want and that you love. Thoughts that make you unshakable. So we are going to stop being so interested in what other people do and what other people think in terms of that being able to say something about us, and we're going to be more interested in what we think about us and making sure we like our reasons for whatever we do and whatever we think. Now, this is not to say that we totally ignore others' experience and the indirect impact that we can have on others. And it's not to say that we just dismiss ourselves if we find ourselves thinking thoughts about them that do cause us hurt or impact us. But it's really about not being confused about what's in your control and what's your responsibility, and therefore where you put your energy. When we believe what they think and how they behave is about us, then we can start to do things to try and change the way they think and behave, which, as you know from the cognitive program, is often not only fruitless but highly frustrating when we keep reinforcing how little control we have over them and their cognitive programs. But considering that we do have an indirect influence on people, we might want to actually change the way that we show up based on understanding this human experience that other people are also allowing themselves to be impacted indirectly by how we behave. So we want to be totally empowered and accept and understand fully that their thoughts are their responsibility, our thoughts are our responsibility, and we still might want to ask, how is this about me? How do I play into this equation? Is there anything I want to clarify from them or seek more information on? Do they have a model of the world where when I come home late, they make it mean that I don't respect them? And maybe for someone I love, I do just want to oblige that. Maybe it's not a big sacrifice to me, and I know it will help them in the short term put their mind at ease. It could be an act of respect and trust. What do I want to take responsibility for? What do I want to change? And also ask, how is this not about me? How does it make sense from their model of the world, from what you know about them in general, that they are thinking that or feeling that, even if they're mistaken in you being the cause? And to open your mind when it really does feel like your fault and your responsibility because you're used to thinking that way, you could ask, what are, say, 3 other explanations for why they felt that way, why they did that, why they said that don't involve you being the problem or a terrible person or having done something wrong? While this idea that their thoughts are their responsibility and not our responsibility can feel like it can create disconnection between people, it's actually quite the opposite. Byron Katie says that our ability to see and connect with the person in front of us, to understand the person in front of us, is limited by what we think we already know about them. Right? What we think we know blocks us from actually meeting them where they're at and understanding them, because we've already decided on our explanations in our head. And especially when we tend to make it personal, we tend to make these things an attack or offense against us because of these fears and insecurities of our mind that's always looking for threats and problems, then allowing those assumptions to go unquestioned that make things personal can create more disconnection in that way. If you can create this separation and stop this misinterpretation and over responsibility about what other people think and do and what it means about you, then you will be more unshakable. So I'm so excited for you to start implementing this model of the world, this belief system in your life. Good luck. The next belief, model of the world in this pillar of your relationship with other people, is one I'm incredibly excited to share with you because it creates so much empowerment, and in doing so opens up so many different opportunities to you that you didn't think were available to you, that you didn't think you could handle, or that you would want to handle, that you'd want to put yourself in the situation to experience. This is really about recognizing and reclaiming power that you've given away to other people. This is my concept of self-safety. Self-safety in contrast to psychological safety. And I'm not saying to disregard psychological safety. It is a brilliant concept. If I could wave my magic wand and have everybody act in a psychological safe way for everyone all the time, I would do it in a heartbeat. And also for my clients, I want you to focus on what is in your control, which is self-safety. This is all about understanding why it seems like other people can affect you, understanding what mechanisms are actually happening to allow that sequence for somebody to do something or say something about you, criticize you, or quote, embarrass you, quote, hurt you, and for you to seemingly feel that effect. And from the concept of self-safety, from this belief system, from this model of the world, I'm going to help you understand how you are always the one who determines how you feel, including whether you feel safe or not to go and take risky action or to give yourself permission to do whatever you want to do. Others can't hurt our feelings. Others can't create or affect our feelings. We are the gatekeepers to our feelings with our thoughts. You understand this from your understanding of the cognitive program. I am not offering this belief to dismiss the importance of or the experience of being hurt or being affected by what others do or condoning bad behavior. In an ideal world, we would always be in psychologically safe environments, i.e. environments that don't make us feel afraid to speak up, tell the truth, be ourselves. But I'm bringing self-safety to you because that is not, unfortunately, how the world works. And when we give our power away to other people by saying that they can do things that then affects how we feel, that makes us feel unsafe or hurt or shame, etc., then we're left in the disempowered position of saying, well, I need you to change. I need you to stop doing that or start doing this in order for me to feel how I want to feel, in order for me to be able to show up the way that I want to show up or think the way that I want to think. We're giving our power away to other people. And as we've spoken about, we don't have control of how other people show up because we don't have control of what drives their behavior, their thoughts and emotions. There are, of course, situations, unfortunately, where somebody can physically harm us. There are ways that people can affect our psychology, particularly over time, or putting us in certain situations that do affect our mind in a way that's not easy to repair or that fundamentally changes the way we think. And that in that moment can strip us of our ability to remember that we do have control. And what I'm talking about here are situations of abuse, psychological abuse. But firstly, luckily, situations of physical harm are not really our day-to-day encounters for most of us today. But actually, most of the time when you're giving away your power and you're saying that you can't do XYZ because somebody else is showing up this way, or you feel this way because they're doing this, they are situations where we can take more control if we get conscious and we clean up our thinking. As opposed to lots of people have a trauma history and an experience of trauma that's changed their brain in times where they were vulnerable and there were power imbalances and they didn't have their autonomy when they were younger. Now, those situations aren't for coaching. In those situations, I recommend professional help, whether it's professional protection services or mental health services. And as you guys know, a coach isn't a mental health professional. I am not acting in the capacity of a mental health professional in any way here. So taking those situations off the table here, the underlying principle here is that other people cannot hurt or harm you. You are the gatekeeper to how you feel through your thoughts, which also means you determine whether you feel safe or not other people. I want you to have access to any room, metaphorically. I want you to be able to stand in any room with any person, regardless of what they do or how they, quote, treat you, because you're the one who determines your safety. You're the one who determines how sufficient you feel and what you think and feel and how you behave in the moment. You don't make that dependent on how somebody else behaves to give you permission or tell you whether it's safe or not. And I want you to recognize how that's an especially bad strategy when you think about the situation where somebody isn't treating you well. Maybe somebody is carelessly criticizing you or maliciously trying to tear you down. That person is very unlikely to respond to you asking them to treat you differently, right? They've already kind of shown they have a disregard for your experience and how you feel. But with self-safety, I want you to recognize what determines whether you feel safe or not. Safe to do whatever you want to do, show up how you want to show up, stay in the metaphorical room, go to a different room, upgrade your room. Depends on what you think. Your feelings of safety come from your thoughts about whether you're safe or not, whether there's a threat here or not by them. Here's how you know this. You've seen a person be criticized who is unshakable and have them not be affected by somebody's criticism. You can even see somebody attempting to humiliate them, embarrass them, to reject them. And still, no matter what that other person does, the unshakable person is unshaken. They're unaffected, right? It's not the criticism, it's not the attempted humiliation, it's not the rejection that actually causes the other person to feel unsafe or not, but it's this unshakable person's thoughts. They can hear the criticism from the other and simply be amused or confused, curious. That's an interesting thought. It's so interesting because I never would have thought of that because I really don't believe it. Or even consider that there are people who don't see criticism as something to be ashamed about or feel bad about. They don't instantly go and make it mean in their thoughts that something's wrong with them. They can stay very detached from it and think, oh yes, I could improve in that place. That wasn't done very well. And just keep it to that. They don't go and make it mean anything about them, which we commonly do. See our first belief about taking things personally, right? So it's not the criticism or the rejection that makes a person feel a certain way. It's their thoughts about how the other person behaves. It's only if you A, agree with the criticism, and B, agree it's a problem, and C, probably make it mean there's some kind of problem with you or in this situation because that criticism has occurred. Even when you think about humiliation, somebody can try to humiliate you in some way. But again, it's only if you agree that whatever they've done or shared is a humiliating thing, is something that is embarrassing, that you would even feel the effect of that. Your thoughts are the gatekeeper to your emotions. And then your emotions are the gatekeeper to your behaviors, right? So if that person, that unshakable person, wants to keep showing up however they want to show up, bold, powerful, strong, confident, humble, open, caring, compassionate, even towards the person who's trying to criticize or humiliate them, they can, if they allow themselves to feel however they want to feel, based on what they think. Now, I'm not saying it's not completely reasonable or expected even to allow yourself to be hurt by somebody's actions or something that they say, especially when it's got malicious intent or when it's hitting a spot of insecurity or when you are really attached to an outcome. But what I'm offering you here is that's not the only way to react. And with that, you don't have to do things to try and avoid criticism. You don't have to make something like criticism an unsafe thing, or rejection or humiliation or being disliked or being disapproved of, or somebody being disappointed in you. And if you want to be that unshakable person, regardless of what other people do around you, then this self-safety concept is here for you. And I can train you in this through coaching, through learning to manage your mind, and through adopting these new belief systems, these new models of the world. A lot of people will try to coach you into setting a boundary when somebody, quote, mistreats you. But I don't like to make that my first point of call when I'm coaching. Instead, I would rather create more empowerment and resilience through this self-safety so that my clients, my members, my doctors can be in any room they want, anytime, regardless of what somebody else does. Because if you just say that behavior is unacceptable and therefore I'm going to set a boundary and I'm going to remove myself from this situation, or of course you request that the other person changes their behavior, but then as you know, you don't have control over whether they change their behavior or not, then your only choice is to remove yourself from that situation if it makes you feel unsafe and that's unacceptable to you. I don't want you to limit your options in life that way. I want you to expand your options. I want you to be able to be in any room you want. And even taking it even further, for you to be the strongest energy in that room, even from that person who is so confidently trying to tear you down or hurt you or make you feel unsafe. Not only can you be unaffected by that, but you can make your confidence in the way that you show up, your unshakability, the strongest energy in the room. That's available from a base of self-safety. So let's get a bit more granular and tangible with this so you can understand why they affect you, and therefore you can intervene on that process and be more unshakable. So from the cognitive program, you know that you feel an emotion, safe or unsafe, based on what you're thinking, based on your assessment, your mind's perception of whether this situation is safe or unsafe. Now, the situation you're interpreting in this case is how the other person is behaving. So somebody here can make some kind of threat to you. Say the threat is a criticism. They say, "This is a terrible job." Now, I want you to imagine that your mind has a semi-permeable membrane in terms of what thoughts you will accept into your mind and believe as true. At the moment, the way you're probably operating, if you believe that what other people say or do causes your feelings, you have a very permeable membrane where you just accept what they say into your mind, and accepting that thought as true, believing that thought is what creates the emotion for you. And often there's even another step here where our fear-based mind will add another layer of meaning. So they say you've done a terrible job and you accept, "I have done a terrible job" as a thought, and your mind could even add, "and so I'm bad at my job." So you might feel the emotions from those thoughts of shame and rejection. Now recognize that intermediate step between what they said and what you felt was your thought. The thoughts that you accepted as true. Instead, I want you to put a security guard, a bouncer at the front door of your mind that decides what thoughts you let in and accept as true based on what kind of party you want to have in your mind, based on what you want to think. Because you know that you don't have to accept the thoughts that they think are true as true yourself. You get to decide what you think. So I want you to have this security guard that knows this is the kind of way that I want to think. This is the kind of party I want to have. This is the kind of vibe I want to have in my mind, in my life. And therefore, I will not allow that thought in that I'm really not good at my job. Right now, you have a lazy security guard, or you have no security guard at all, most likely. You don't think about what thoughts you want to think. You just passively accept other people's thoughts and opinions as true. Why does what other people say, what they do, affect you? I want you to start to ask yourself that question in all the situations where you feel hurt by or unsafe with somebody else. When you notice what they do or what they say affects you, I want you to start to ask, why? Why is this affecting me? And you'll find the answer in looking at, what am I thinking about what they've said or what they've done? What am I making it mean? Am I making it mean it's unsafe for me to fail? Am I making it mean I'm being rejected? Am I making it mean I'm not wanted here? I'm doing it wrong. There's something wrong with me. You know from this work that you feel a certain way because of what you're thinking. When we say, they hurt me, they made me feel unsafe, we know we're confused. They said words, they did something, and then we had a thought that created an emotion. It's our thought. It's the meaning we added. It's what we believed that hurt us. Not what they did, not what they said, not their words. You know this because somebody can say something to you that you don't believe. They might believe it, but you don't believe it. And because you don't believe it's true, or you don't believe it's a problem, then it won't have an emotional effect on you. Now, once you understand why something is affecting you, what somebody said or what somebody's doing is affecting you, you are getting back in control here. And not only that, but this can teach you so much about yourself. I am always so fascinated when I find myself affected by what somebody else said or did. I'm like, wow, what am I thinking that made that affect me? What's going on here? What belief do I have to explore here that's affecting my unshakability? How can I up level here? Anytime you're thinking, I wish they wouldn't say that, I wish they wouldn't do that, anytime you're wanting somebody to change, ask, why does it affect me? How does it affect me? What's the thought? Anytime you find yourself wanting someone to do something, ask, how would it affect me if they did? How would I get to feel? Or what would I give myself permission to do? What would I allow myself to do if they did that? You know, if they praised me or accepted me or said this about my work or celebrated or supported me, then what would I let myself do? Anytime you find yourself wanting someone to stop doing something, ask, why? How would it affect me? What do I think I would get to feel, think, do if they stop doing that? Anytime you want somebody to think a certain way about you, why? How would it affect you? To stop allowing people to affect us, to stop allowing people to shake us with what they say or what they do, we need to understand in the first place why it affects us. We need to understand what we're thinking, what we're making it mean, what we're believing in that moment to create that emotional effect. And better yet, when we do that work for ourselves, we now can see what we really want behind the confusion of trying to indirectly get it through other people. We can see what we really want, and then we can also give that to ourselves. Give ourselves the feeling that we want. Give ourselves permission to think what we want to think, believe what we want to believe about ourselves and the world, and do what we want to do. Give ourselves permission to show up in the world the way we want to. Again, regardless of what they do, because you know it's not about them, it's about you. That is not only self-safety, but now you're creating self-sufficiency. You're giving yourself what you want and what you need. And on the other hand, if you keep making other people conditional for how you think, how you feel, and how you show up, how you behave, then they control you. Do you really want to give somebody else that much power in your life? Do you really want to leave your sense of safety up to other people, be it close people in your life or strangers? Because if you keep this belief system that other people can affect you, other people can hurt you, other people can make you feel unsafe, and you don't take responsibility for your thoughts creating your emotions, and your emotions creating your behaviors, then that's what you're doing. You're giving your power away to even strangers. I don't give other people control of how I feel. I understand other people's words only hurt me if I believe them. I understand other people's thoughts only affect me if I believe they mean something about me. as opposed to something about them. I understand I'm only wanting them to behave differently so that I can think, feel, and behave differently. I understand that instead I can give myself permission to behave how I want to behave. I understand that I'm the one who decides what I think, and that generates how I feel, and that drives how I behave. Then I react to them, no matter how they're behaving, from my best self, from the self that best represents me, my values, regardless of how they're behaving. I want you to have this unshakable superpower too: self-safety. So my beautiful friends, from the beautiful work that you do through the concept of self-safety, you will start to question why you feel affected by other people. You'll start to realize why you're wanting other people to behave differently, because you're thinking that it will give you something back. You're thinking that it will make you think, feel, or behave differently, or give yourself permission to behave differently. And in doing that self-inquiry, you will start to understand yourself so much better. You'll not only be more empowered and feel more safe and sufficient in your life, but you're actually going to come to understand yourself so much better. We spend so much time being confused about wanting other people to do X, Y, Z to change the way that we think, feel, or what we allow ourselves to do. It's this very indirect, confusing, and often futile way of trying to get what we want and have the experience that we want in our lives. But instead, this incredible work is going to direct you to actually answering the question of, what do you want? It is a beautiful thing. This next belief I want to offer you as a part of being unshakable, as a part of the unshakable mindset, is I give myself what I want and what I need. This process, from stopping taking over responsibility for other people, what they think and how they behave, stopping being affected or allowing yourself to be confused that you're affected by what other people do, or you need them to behave a certain way so that you can think, feel, and behave a certain way yourself, leads us to start taking responsibility and claiming our power in being able to give ourselves what we want and what we need. When we stop wasting time looking at them to fulfill our wants and needs, when that is out of our control. And often in life we get lucky and people do behave the way that we want them to behave in many aspects. But it's a problem when they don't, isn't it? Because then you're left not having what you want and what you need in certain aspects, and seemingly with no control over getting it when you're looking to them. But when you start looking to yourself to get what you want and what you need, suddenly you're in control. And really, I would say this is quite an advanced concept that I've only probably been able to enjoy and fully embody over the past couple of years, despite my very long now coaching journey. I think I really held on to the belief for many years that I really did need other people to make me feel the way I wanted to feel, that I needed other people's love and support and validation, and that my own love, support, and validation from myself couldn't fulfill that spot, that even if I was doing that, there would still be a gap. And I'm so excited that I've now got a library of experiences where I can say that that is not the case. I've truly embodied and experienced, in particular, most recently, supporting myself when I was wanting, I still fell into the trap of wanting the support from somebody else, somebody dear to me, with something very important to me. I was wanting their support and I was feeling sorry for myself when I didn't get it. And guys, I'm not saying that you shouldn't or can't want or enjoy the support of other people. I definitely get to enjoy that. But my situation was I was suffering and thinking that I couldn't feel supported when I didn't have their support, and see how that's disempowering. That's what I'm offering you here, a more empowered way to think about the world and get what you want and what you need. So I went through that painful confusion and experience of not feeling supported and feeling like, oh, well, then I'm just gonna have to go without support. I'm gonna have to do this feeling unsupported. And then remembering, wait a second, this is a chance for me to support myself. And I did. I got on board. I supported myself. I asked myself what I wanted, what I needed, and I gave that to myself, and it was enough. And the time that I actually realized that it was enough was weeks later, when they came around and they gave me their loving support in their own time, when they were ready, when they decided to, when whatever else had stopped happening in their life, whatever, the clouds passed, or for whatever reason, none of my business, their decision, they decided to at that point. And it was so interesting that there was no void to fill. I didn't suddenly feel different when they gave me their support in the way that I would have in the past felt different when I wasn't supporting myself, and then somebody gave me their support, and then I get this woof, like energy, feeling, I get this emotional effect from that. But it was like that space was already occupied, that space was already full. And it was like more support on top of that didn't have anywhere to go. It was just like the cherry on top. I did delight in it. I did indulge in it and enjoy it and appreciate the support. But it was very obvious to me that there was no shift. It was like, I'm already supported. I'm already saturated with support. There's nothing missing here. I truly didn't need or wasn't affected by their support, only to the point that I wanted to delight in it as the cherry on top. And this is really the same principle here of other people don't determine how you feel. You determine how you feel. Other people don't create your emotions. Even supported, even loved, you're the one who generates that experience. Other people can't create your emotions for you. It's always your thoughts. My thoughts had already created the emotion of supported. Even though they were supporting me, it didn't have an emotional effect on me. So that situation of recognizing I wanted somebody to show up in a certain way so that I could feel a certain way, so that I could give myself permission to behave a certain way, right? This is a cognitive program playing out. I wanted to think I'm supported, just using very broad stroke thoughts, so I could feel supported, so I could allow myself to keep showing up when it was hard and feeling like I was safe, giving myself permission to keep doing things that felt risky and hard, to keep giving myself validation and love. They're the things that I wanted, that I realized I wanted when I was wanting somebody else to behave differently. Recognizing that's what I wanted, I then had an opportunity to give it to myself. Then I got to experience that full cognitive program with all the benefits of it. You determine what you feel. You determine and create your emotions, not them. You determine and create your whole cognitive programs, your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. They're all your creations, your responsibility, in your power, and they don't have power over them. They can't directly influence my cognitive program, even if I want them to. They can only influence my cognitive program because I allow the thought. I will accept the thought. They're supporting me. That's how I feel supported by them. Only because I have the thought they're supporting me. For all I know, they might not be supporting me. They might have just totally tricked me. But it's because I'm having the thought that I feel the emotion. So there's a really important concept here that I want to offer you within this belief. And that is the concept of emotional ransom. My clients know I talk about this all the time. So we do this to ourselves, unfortunately, so common. We hold our emotions at ransom, waiting for something outside of us, often somebody, to change or do something, behave a certain way, so that we will allow ourselves to feel that emotion. It sounds like, I'm not going to feel supported until they support me. I'm not going to feel supported until they say XYZ, until they do XYZ. I'm holding the emotion supported at ransom until they do something. Where are you doing this with what you want and what you need? Holding what you want and what you need at ransom, waiting for someone else to change, waiting for someone to do something. We also hold the other elements of the cognitive program at ransom. So the cognitive program is our thought, emotion, and behavior response to any situation. So we can say, I'm not going to allow myself to think that I'm worthy until this person expresses their love for me or praise for me. Emotional ransom, as we just talked about, I'm not going to allow myself to feel respected until this person arrives on time. And behaviors, I'm not going to allow myself to do this thing. I'm not going to give myself permission to do this thing. I'm not going to give myself permission to stop worrying or fretting until XYZ changes, until XYZ happens, until this person does this or that. Our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are in our control, and yet we withhold them from ourselves based on what other people do or don't do, based on things key that are outside of our control. When our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors were in our control the whole time. Belief ransom, thought ransom, emotional ransom, behavior ransom, cognitive program ransom. I want to solidify this idea with addressing the most common objections to this idea. I gave you that example of me feeling supported, which feels like it would be something that truly needs somebody else to be involved in order for us to feel that emotion. And other emotions or thoughts that we hold at ransom, that we have a lot of resistance to believing we can give it to ourselves, are of love and of feeling alone. And I'm going to challenge you to open your mind to that far extreme, it seems, to consider that you don't need somebody else to do anything for you to feel loved, and you don't need somebody else to do anything to not feel alone. And I did this very work with a couple of my clients with incredible success. So love is something that people think is done to us, that happens to us, that other people give to us. But love is an emotion. Love is something we feel, isn't it? And therefore it comes from our thoughts. We know this because people can feel love for somebody who doesn't love them, right? It can't be that somebody loving you is what makes you feel love. We know that you can feel love from somebody who's passed away. We know that you can feel loved without knowing that actually your partner has fallen out of love with you. Maybe they've betrayed you even. And it's not until you actually hear about the betrayal that you feel unloved, only because now you've had the thought that they don't love you. But the betrayal or the falling out of love might have happened before that. But because you weren't aware of it, it wasn't in your conscious experience, you didn't have a perception or thought about it, you didn't feel that lack of love, right? This is all because, again, it's our thoughts that create our emotions. One of my clients wanted love in her life, and she was thinking that her own love wasn't the answer. She was afraid of not being loved and afraid of being alone, and ironically, because of that, she was keeping people around her as her close friends and loved ones who didn't treat her well. People are often so afraid of the feeling of being alone or the thought of being alone that they will keep people around that they're not even connected with. But we know that being alone and feeling alone, and certainly the health impacts of being alone, don't come from not physically having people around you. People are alone and feeling the health impacts of being alone despite being in big cities or having big friendship groups, because being alone is more about the experience of being alone, which is about how well you connect with somebody else. And if you're keeping people around you who don't love you, who don't treat you well, who you're not connecting with, you might as well be alone. And it might even be worse for you to continually reinforce that you're allowing people to treat you that way and reinforcing that you're not worthy of setting boundaries and saying no to people who don't treat you well. The point of doing the work with my client to give love to herself and not being afraid of being alone was in part that when she allowed herself to feel loved, she treated herself in a way that she would seek out people in her life that didn't threaten to take away that feeling of love, that only reinforced her feeling love. People that treated her well, because now she knew what it was like to be treated well by herself. Notice how not only does she have what she wants and needs already, but she's actually more likely to find people who maintain that same standard with her. And I'm happy to report she's now getting married to an incredible partner next month. So no more cognitive program ransom, no more thought ransom, emotion ransom, or behavior ransom. You give yourself permission to show up how you want. You anoint yourself. You give yourself the feelings that you want, the energy that you want, and you give yourself the thoughts you want. You give yourself permission to think, and you cultivate the beliefs that you want to have about yourself and the world. You don't need other people to have what you want and what you need. The next belief, model of the world, a way of thinking about the world that I'm going to offer you is, I let other people be themselves. And with that, reciprocally, I allow and hold the standard of letting myself be myself too, my authentic self. That's the goal. That's the standard that I want to hold here. Now, with the other beliefs I've offered you when it comes to this pillar of your relationship with other people, how you relate to other people, I hope I very clearly reinforce the idea for you to start internalizing that other people's cognitive program, how they think, feel, and behave, is outside of your responsibility. And we too often try to take responsibility for what other people think, feel, and do. This is seen in the way that we think and behave when we try to control other people's impressions of us, adjust things to meet other people's approval, when we believe that we can do things to make other people feel good or bad. All of these things are reflecting a premise that we believe that we have control and responsibility for other people's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, which we don't. And with that, you might find the suggestion to let other people be themselves quite amusing, because you're like, well, do I actually even have any other option? Do I actually have any control over what other people decide to do and how they decide to be? And ultimately, no. Yes, of course, we can have influence, but we do not have control, and we do not have the manipulative powers that we seem to think we do, evidenced by, again, that thinking and the behaviors that I was just talking about. I use the word manipulative and control to be provocative because I really want you to understand that, even if it seems well intended from, people pleasing or from wanting other people to feel better or be happier or suffer less, you're still trying to manipulate their experience, which is futile. So the fact that you can't actually stop people from being themselves isn't what I'm going to talk about in this belief section. But I want to talk about the other reasons for why you might want to take on this belief and this model of the world of just allowing other people to be themselves and to not try to intervene on, influence, or manipulate them, their life, their decisions, how they show up. So firstly, there's a bit of a sub-belief within this belief, and that is that everybody has the right and should get the joy and experience in their life of being their authentic self, unhindered by the interventions of all the other people who think they know how they should be, and in doing that, try and take away their autonomy, right? And when you think about this, I want you to think about what you want for yourself or what you'd want for a loved one. How would you feel if you constantly had people asserting that you should live your life differently or that you should change in a certain way, and that people weren't allowing you to have your own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors? You wouldn't want someone else to be trying to change or manipulate you, even with their best intentions. Most likely, that's me offering for you to reflect on that. Again, you don't have to take on any of these things I'm talking about. I'm just offering them to you as potentially useful belief systems, models of the world, perspectives. This attempt to take someone's autonomy away or feel like we have the right to judge them or dictate what they should or shouldn't do is always going to be a very self-orientated view. And I really like to challenge myself with the thought of, well, who do you think you are to think that you could know what's best or good or right for somebody else's life? You only have your own viewpoint. Well, that's why I've chosen to be a coach, because I don't like to give people advice. I don't enjoy that from my value set. What I really do enjoy is helping people understand what's good and right for them and what they value, and therefore what they will do from that value set. I really enjoy that process of liberating people and empowering people from there, rather than me being prescriptive and asserting what I think is right. Although that certainly has its place, just not in this profession, in other professions. And this taking of autonomy can be hidden under, again, sweet sounding intentions, kind, nice, compassionate, helpful sounding intentions. We might see somebody suffering or struggling, for example, and think, I can help them, I can fix them. But your version of helping or fixing isn't inherently helpful. We need to recognize, and you can look in your life that for so many times, the greatest things that happened to you came through a path of struggle, and through you being able to sit in the struggle and work it out and go through it. And whether it's a new skill set or new knowledge that you gain through going through that struggle and staying with that struggle, or even just the sense of resilience and empowerment that you get through being able to watch yourself go through a struggle and overcome it, or keep going after that hardship, even that in itself can be such a positive gift in our lives. So we might think that taking away somebody's suffering is objectively helpful, but even that's not true. Sometimes letting someone suffer is the most loving and most helpful thing you can do. Think about your children. I completely understand the inclination to want to bubble wrap them and stop them from ever experiencing any pain or suffering in their life. And also, that if you do that to a child, you rob them of the growth and resilience they develop that really serves them later in life. Think about our immune system. If we never challenge our immune systems as humans, then it leaves us very vulnerable to the world later. Through struggle, we get strength. Struggle and suffering isn't inherently a bad thing or something that you are being helpful in rescuing somebody from. Now, the second reason that I find this decision to allow other people to be themselves useful is because this allows for authenticity. The truth is, when we're trying to change somebody, we're often wanting to change them for the effect that we expect it to have on us. Even if you're relieving their suffering, you're like, I want to relieve their suffering because then I will get to feel more calm and reassured and not have to worry about them, for example. But in particular, allowing somebody to be themselves without trying to change them creates the space for true intimacy and connection, which I think is one of the most gorgeous, fulfilling, incredible experiences of life. I've been thinking about this a lot in my best relationships, and for whatever reason, simply being seen and known by someone feels important to me and enjoyable to me and fulfilling to me as a human, having that relationship with somebody. And this might be values-based too, but we also know that humans are relational creatures. And we know that loneliness does affect our health and well-being, and again, it's not about physical loneliness, it's about that connection that we have with people. And when you aren't authentic, you're not having a true connection, right? If you're asking the other person to change so that you like them, you're actually liking, connecting with edited version of them, an inauthentic version of them. Essentially, you're not really connecting with them. And I want you to think about that as well for yourself. We're saying allow people to be themselves, and that includes you. If you choose to change yourself in order to create a connection with somebody else, they're not really connecting with you. They're connecting with this fake version of you, not the real you. And I suspect in those situations, you, like me, will find that that is not a fulfilling connection, because connection really requires authenticity. I liken it to receiving an award that you don't think you deserve. It's very unfulfilling to receive an award when you think, I don't really deserve this, or I don't value it, because you are not seeing that that award has been awarded for a good reason, a reason you like. I've received awards while feeling undeserving of them, and it only makes me think less of the award, even though I was striving for and wanting the award, because I didn't feel like I was deserving of it. All that happened was I didn't suddenly feel deserving of it when I got it, but I actually discounted the award. You've got to watch your brain doing this. So if you receive love and acceptance and a sense of belonging from people who actually only know an edited fake version of you, or a turned down muted version of you, some version of you that's changed, then you will know that it's not true love, it's not true acceptance, it's not true belonging. You only know that you can receive that with this mask, with this editing of yourself, and you won't get to experience the true sense of love and belonging that you can when you are your authentic self. And the sad thing is, I truly believe, and again, this is a choice that I believe that I'm just offering to you, that we all have people out there that we can truly connect with, but when we are afraid that nobody will like us for our authentic selves and we edit ourselves, we also cut off our ability to find those people because we're not signaling, hey, this is me over here. We're only signaling the fake version of ourselves. And so the people who would connect with us don't actually see us. And I think it's a real shame. So letting other people be themselves and not trying to change them, and with that, not trying to change yourself, I think is the only true path to really getting those things that we want so much as humans, which is connection, intimacy, being seen, being known, being loved, being accepted. Some of the most beautiful experiences in life. Don't steal that from yourself, and don't steal it from other people by asking them to change. If you're asking someone to change for you, then maybe you should consider that that's not fair on them. You're robbing them of that connection and yourself as well. So maybe they're just not your people, and that's okay. Or maybe as well, you can use mind management, you can use coaching to look into, why is that a problem for me? Why do I want them to change in that way? What do I think that will give me that I can't have now or I can't create myself? We always want to come back to remembering how we feel is based on what we think. And it's very easy for us to blame other people and say, you should change so that I can like you. And actually we should just look at like, why don't I like you? Why is that thing that you do rubbing me up the wrong way? Why is it a problem for me? Does it need to be a problem for me? Again, I'm not saying you should like or love everyone, but I'm always suggesting that you have more power than you think in terms of how you think, feel, and behave. Now, finally, I just want to finish with highlighting something that challenges us in terms of letting people be themselves, which includes letting them have the thoughts that they have and recognizing they're their thoughts, they're their responsibility, they're their creations, and they're out of our control. And this is when people have thoughts about us that, probably undesired, but more to the point, they are incorrect. When people have thoughts about us that are wrong about us, when people are wrong about us, this can feel like a great injustice that we must fix. We're not good at letting people misunderstand us and being wrong about us. But it commonly happens. It's happening all the time without your knowing. But when you become aware of somebody being wrong about you, we very quickly feel like we need to fix it, and then it's our responsibility to fix it, that it must be corrected. But a part of letting others be themselves is letting them have their own thoughts, and with that, letting them be wrong about you. Now, if you've got an important relationship, and key, it's a good relationship, then this often won't be a problem. Because in a good relationship, people will have the interest in you to want to know and understand you properly. And so when you find that somebody's misunderstanding you in some way, there will be a space there for you to have a conversation, to clarify, correct, to get on the same page. And also, there'll be people in your life who you don't have this good relationship with, and they will be committed to misunderstanding you. They will not be interested in any way, shape, or form about what you have to say about the subject matter, which is you. And nothing that you can say or do will change their mind. So with this, I want you to come back to a few principles we've talked about. 1, you can't control what they think. Particularly in this situation, right? When you haven't got a good relationship with this person and they're not interested in reconsidering their thoughts, you have no control of their thoughts. They are the gatekeeper to their thoughts. They will think what they decide to think. Secondly, get interested in why it affects you, why it bothers you. As a shortcut, usually it's because we make it mean if they're having this thought about us, then it must in some way be true. And what you can do here is you can know what you think about yourself and not allow what other people think about you to shake that truth that you know. Finally, as we've talked about in this belief, letting people be who they are. You've now allowed them to reveal themselves to you as someone who isn't interested in understanding you, in seeing you. They're committed to misunderstanding you. Now, you get to decide what place they're going to have in your life. When you let people be who they are, when you let people show you who they are, then you are armed with the most amount of information for you to decide what role they're going to get in your life. And in this case, you might decide that you're not going to invest any more energy in conversing with somebody who's not actually in a true conversation with you. We can allow people to be wrong about us, recognize that there's nothing we can do, or recognize when there's nothing we can do, and then get on with being unaffected. Let them be themselves, and don't let that stop you from showing up as your best self or misspending any of your resources, your time, your energy on somebody who you don't want to play a role in or influence your life. When you allow people to be themselves, including yourself, you're going to have better relationships and you're going to have a more fulfilling life. And you're going to save so much wasted time and energy compared to somebody who's trying to control and manipulate somebody else. All right, my beautiful friends, full circle for this last belief that I'm going to offer you, this last model of the world to think from when it comes to your relationships with other people. And that is your relationship that you have with somebody, how you feel about and towards somebody is determined by what you think about them. And with that, I want you to choose your thoughts to create the relationship that you want. I want you to use your thoughts so that you show up in the relationship, professional or personal, in the way that you want. For example, whether you feel love towards someone, whether you love someone, whether you feel connected with someone, whether you have a connection with someone, whether you are interested in someone or something, whether you find that interesting, is not determined by the person or the subject. It's determined by, you know by now, guys, your thoughts, right? If you're having thoughts that create a loving emotion, if you're having thoughts that are creating a sense of connection, if you're having thoughts that are creating interest, then you will feel love, connected, or interested in that person or subject. You can't say they're not lovable or they're boring. It's not about them, it's about you. It's about your ability to create love, loving thoughts, loving feelings towards them. It's about your ability to cultivate interest, to be interested. Now, of course, you are absolutely free to just decide that's not for me or they're not for me. Or I don't love them because I don't like them because I don't find that interesting because I find it boring because And you can totally have those thoughts. I have no judgments towards them. But this is for if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling disempowered, if you're like, what is going on with this relationship? Why am I not feeling connected when I want to feel connected? Why am I not finding this interesting? You could even take the example of study. Why am I not finding this study interesting when it would just be such a better experience if I could be interested? And the answer is in your thoughts. So I want you to take ownership of when you're making judgments about these things, as if there are inherent problems or traits to do with the things outside of you, as opposed to recognizing that it is your thoughts that determine how you feel about them or it. Because when you take ownership, now you have control. When you say, it's just a problem with them or it, then you're powerless. You've got nowhere to go from here. The problem's them, and so end of story. Your only option is to exit. I really think this is particularly important for long-term relationships in our life. And I think not only about our long-term intimate relationships, but also our relationship with our career. We often want these relationships to last. We want our intimate relationship to last and to be able to enjoy the richness of having somebody who knows you and sees you and you have had all these shared experiences with, and you can continue to evolve and grow with. And you want your career to last because in general, the more you invest in your career, the more you upskill, the more advantages you have. And ideally, if you could stay in that area of expertise and grow within that area of expertise, presumably, then you would be generally more highly rewarded, not only in terms of money, but also in terms of flexibility and perhaps enjoyment and fulfillment that can come from that mastery. And that's, again, just personal. You might not want that for whatever reason, but often people don't want that because they don't know how to cultivate interest. They don't know how to cultivate connection. And so they think that just changing their circumstances, changing their job, or changing their relationship is the only way that they can feel interested or excited or loved and connected again. But it's not true. You're blaming that thing outside of you, the person or the subject. But actually, the power is in you. If you've fallen out of love, or you're no longer interested or stimulated by your work, then that's because of your thoughts. And even take the example of not being stimulated by your work. Say the level that you're at with your work, you're not stimulated in, but you don't have to change jobs. If you didn't have to blame the job inherently, then maybe you could say, I've noticed a want here. I'm going to create some more stimulation that I want within that job. But if we just stop at, oh, well, the job's just not stimulating, I'm just not interested anymore, then we limit our options. And obviously that's the same with our partner as the other example. Same situation when you just say, I just don't like that person. Not about them, it's about you. And it's okay if you are happy to be the person who just doesn't like people and harbors those feelings towards people and maybe doesn't bother you that much. But if you don't want to have those negative feelings towards people and draw those judgments about people, then here's the option to recognize it's your thoughts that are creating that emotion, that sense of disliking, and you can explore that. You can take ownership of how you feel. If you want to be someone who sees the magic in people, then you take responsibility for your thoughts about that person. So this belief, this model of the world, this way of thinking is really just to show you how much control you have over your relationships in your life. We think that we're dependent on and at the mercy of the other person, or as I've given as a different example, our careers or work or some object or some project, some interest area. But actually, you can have the relationships that you want in any case because your experience depends on your thoughts and you have control over your thoughts. I challenge you to use your thoughts strategically to have the relationships that you want in your life instead of blaming other people or other things and asking or expecting them to change so that you can feel differently. I have made a lot of requests and I've set boundaries and I've done all kinds of things in my relationships of all different kinds that are aimed at changing the situation. I'm not saying take that off the table. And I do, of course, have deal breakers in my relationships. I wouldn't stay with any person or in any career through absolutely anything. That's not my personal value set. I have lines that can be crossed. And I'd like to offer that you consider what those lines are for you too. And also, I know I can make these requests, for example, and have them not met. And then what? What if it's not a deal breaker? Well, in that case, I still want to stay in this relationship and I want to meet my wants and needs as best as possible in the context of this relationship when this other person or the entity isn't willing or able to do it for me, for lack of better words. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. If you say, I want a more loving relationship, for example, and you've requested that and it's been an empty request, if you start to give that to yourself, if you start to fulfill that yourself, you'll likely find the course of events will be that you start feeling more love, you start being more loving towards yourself, you start being more loving towards them, and then suddenly there is more love in the relationship. And it wouldn't be unsurprising in this context that the other person follows suit anyway. Now, I'm not describing control here, but I'm describing this element of you go first. You set the standard. You show people what's possible and available. And often if you want it for good reasons and it's a good thing, then people want to come to the party anyway. It's the same with your work. If you start lifting your standards and meeting those standards at work, then you might find that your workplace also rises to that standard too. And this is in a way how leadership works. Even people in formal leadership positions don't have control, but what they use is influence. And this influence doesn't come from them telling people what to think or what to feel or what to do, trying to control them or trying to fix them. This influence often comes from you go first, you demonstrate what's good, you show people what's available, and then they get to decide from their own autonomy if they want that too. And for so many of us in our lives, we haven't had the best case scenarios modeled for us. And for so many of us, instead of taking ownership of our thoughts and recognizing the power that we can have in terms of making these changes and creating these situations for ourselves, we are waiting for other people to do it or waiting for other people to give us permission to do it, and therefore we never advance in that area. I'm saying recognize the power that you have in your thoughts and use your thoughts strategically to create what you want. Use your thoughts to create those emotions, create those behaviors. What you perceive affects your body and your behavior. That's the cognitive program. That's how you start feeling different and showing up differently in your life and creating different outcomes. And when you show up differently and you create different outcomes, you show other people what is possible. And in these relationships, professional or personal, you are a walking, talking invitation for them to join you. All right, my beautiful friends, there was a lot in this. I hope it was so helpful. I hope it really pushed you and challenged you, made you a little bit uncomfortable, made one eyebrow go up, because that's an indication that it's a stretch in terms of how you currently think about the world compared to what's available to you if you adopt these new beliefs. Let me know which one you're most excited to take on and try on in your life next.